Hi, this is Dr. Keefe at MMPC, and I'm going to take you through how to create orders using Allscripts. So the first thing to do is to show you where orders can be created, and here in the orders section of the APV 2012 chart view, one thing that I can do is click New, and this will take me right to my lab orders. Another option is to click on this little symbol that looks like a beaker with a plus sign on it, and click Lab and Procedures, and I'll go to the same spot. Now, because you need to associate a problem with any order that you create, and you want that problem to potentially help pay for the lab test for the patient, I'm going to show you how just to create an active problem list if it's not something you've done in the past. So the first step is to go to your problem list, and this patient has no problems listed, and that might be a common scenario. So I can either click anywhere in this white box, I can right click and click on New, or I could go down here to New and click here, or I could go up here to this P sign with a plus and click New there. Any way I do it, I'm going to get to the problem list, and I want to enter active problems. Now, for those of you who haven't managed their problem list, that may be something you want to consider. I have a fairly large list of favorites here. Okay, and these are mostly cardiac problems, but you can add whatever you like. If I want to search for something like anemia, I can click in this box and type anemia, and I'll get every anemia option that there is in Allscripts. So let's say this patient has aplastic anemia. I would click on it, right click, and I can make it one of my favorites. If the patient has cold agglutinin disease, I can click on that, right click, make it one of my favorites. And now when I go to my problem list, I'm going to see that cold agglutinin disease is now one of my favorites. If I don't want that to be one of my favorites, I can again click on it and just click on the favorite, and it's going to unclick it. And now when I go back to my active problems, it's gone. So I can quickly go through and delete ones that I don't want to be as part of my favorites. So I could go through and right click, and now you'll see that those ones, it may be hard to tell, but those are all gone. Another option for the problems is something called a quick list, which is this button right here. So you can have a larger favorite list, and then you could have a quick list that only has a few. So if I want to add problems by either mechanism to this patient's active problem list, I could unclick on my quick list, and then I can add a few problems. This patient has fatigue, this patient has hypothyroidism, this patient has hypertension, and this patient has hyperlipidemia. And then I'll hit OK. So now I have some favorites that might both allow me to order labs and have them paid for as an indication. So the next step I'll do is go to the lab sign here and click Lab and Procedures. So one trick that a lot of people have troubles with is how to pick multiple diagnoses for a lab test. And what you want to do is highlight more than one problem. So I'm going to hold the control button on my keyboard, so control button, and highlight fatigue, hyperlipidemia, hypertension, and hypothyroidism. It's very important that you don't check all these but not highlight them. If they're highlighted and checked, it's okay, but they have to be highlighted. So that is the first step, is I'm associating all four of these problems with whatever lab I want to order. So that's step one. Put in your problems, your active problems. Step two is to highlight the problems you want for the lab tests. Step 3 is to go through and choose where you want the lab to be done. And you have two options. We have an interface with Marin General Hospital, so I could click on Marin General Hospital, and you want to do that before you click any labs or the date. That's very important. So highlight your problem, step 1. Step 2, choose your location, and it's either Marin General or just to be performed anywhere. And the to be performed option will lead to the lab being printed, and you can then give it to the patient who can take the lab order wherever they choose. There's currently not any interface with Quest, Sutter, or any other local lab, only through Marin General. So for this example, I'm just going to leave it on to be performed. The next step, so step 3, is to choose the date. It's going to default to today. So if I just want the patient to get the lab today or in the next few weeks, I could just leave it as today. If I want to change the date, then I can pick a month from now, for example, and tell the patient that anytime in about a month to go get the lab test. So I'm choosing July 17th. So step 1, highlight the problem. Step 2, choose the lab location. Step 3, pick your date. Step 4 is pick your labs. Now the most simple example is just to click on them, and this would be if I'm not sending a copy to the primary care doctor or to the patient. So for this patient, I might just want to get a TSH, a lipid profile, a comprehensive metabolic panel, and a CBC. And I'll hit OK, and then I'll hit commit. For those of you who have a printer automatically selected, it'll automatically print to the printer that you choose. Or if you're in more than one location or you want to choose which printer it's going to print to, you can have it set up this way. So just to show you, I'm not going to actually print the lab, but just to show you what it looks like, I'll click on preview. And what you see is it has the lab order for the TSH. It has all the problems that I listed. And then it has the other labs, again, with all 4 problems that I listed. Okay. Okay, so the next example, I'm going to pick a different test patient. All right, for the next example, I'm going to again go to lab and procedures. This patient already has some problems listed. I may want to add a few more. Now, one thing that you can do is in the labs, if you start ordering the labs and then forget that you need to add problems, I can either right-click in this little box and click New, or I could go to the History Builder and add some more. They now have those problems added. So again, I'm going to, step 1, highlight more than one lab, more than one diagnosis. Step 2, choose where I want it to be performed. Step 3, pick the date, and I'll just leave it as today for this patient. Step 4 is to choose the labs. Now in this example, I may want to send a copy to another doctor. So in order to do that, you can either right-click on the lab and click Edit, or you can get to the same spot by double-clicking on the lab. Okay. Now, the way to get to the send a copy to someone else is either to go into additional details, and you'll get this CC results too, or you can also go to results and click CC. Okay. Now this patient has a primary care physician listed as Dr. Young, and the patient himself is test. So what I could do is click, if I wanted to send it to the primary care doctor and to the patient, I could click on both. If I want to order more labs, I'll click Save and Return to the Add Clinical Item, or ACI. Then I could do the same thing with the next lab. I could go through quickly and do multiple labs. So I'll now take a look at this. And what we see is the lipid profile, again associated with more than one diagnosis, and we have a CC to Dr. Young and to the patient. Same thing with digoxin, CC. Okay, now if you do order a lab and you happen to forget to put in the diagnosis altogether, let's say I order a lipid profile without putting in a problem, I'll get a little yellow error. It's not the end of the world. I can just link it to a problem and then move on. I could then highlight that glucose intolerance, click Control, and I could order another lab. But generally try to remember to put in the problems first. So that's ordering labs 101. I'll be continuing with orders for other items in a future web movie. Thanks.